you recommend a diet to help with hypermobility? The first thing you want to think about is, what is your current diet? And you need to have and start with a good basic diet. So this is a diet that includes a lot of whole foods, fruits, vegetables, meats, but good whole foods. So if you currently eat a diet made up of mostly Oreos and Cheetos, that is going to be the first thing you need to look at. Now, just like your vehicle, if you put in bad gasoline, you get bad output. So if you aren't taking in good nutrients and things that you need, you're not going to be able to move and perform as well as you want to. So that is always where you want to start before you really get into any specific or certain diet. Now, once you have that in place, the next place I typically go is more of an anti-inflammatory type diet. And you want to really think about the general basics with this. So start with eliminating sugars, alcohols, which is a type of sugar. And then we move on to cutting back and eliminating things like lactose and dairy. Those can be irritating. And then into gluten. Now, some people need to get rid of all of these. Some people just need to get rid of one or cut back enough to where they don't have as much trouble. So going with a basic anti-inflammatory diet is a good second step. Now with hypermobility, and I'll tell you clinically, my experience has been, some people, it is life-changing. But for other people, it doesn't make any difference at all. So it doesn't tend to be as much related to the hypermobility specifically as it is the individual person and whether or not you have additional issues. So I have lots of clients who are hypermobile and have autoimmune disorders. And that is going to be a little bit different, or hypermobile and colitis, irritable bowel syndrome. So you're going to have different diets for those secondary conditions. Some good basic anti-inflammatory diets that I'm familiar with and have used are things like the Whole30. And typically you should notice a difference within a month. You know, if you've gone dairy-free for the last 6 months and you're not noticing a difference, then that may not be an issue for you. Another part that people tend to forget is hydration. And how much you're drinking and how hydrated you are is hugely impactful for hypermobility. Not only for things like POTS, we have electrolyte issues, we have blood pressure issues. That is going to be extremely important. So making sure that you're getting that 6 to 8 glasses of water a day. The other aspect is if you're dehydrated, your connective tissue and your tissues are going to be stiffer. They're not going to work as well. You're going to feel stiffer. Things are going to feel harder to move. So you want to make sure that that works as well as it can. And staying hydrated is definitely a part of that. And then lastly, as we come into digestion, this is another area where your hypermobility impacts you. Now, I'm talking about general hypermobility. We're talking about global hypermobility issues. So if you have a vascular type, this is not as much geared toward you. That has other specific issues. But with the hypermobility, regular digestion is designed to work where our abdomen is a high pressure cavity. So what that means is we need to be able to generate quite a bit of pressure within our stomach area, our abdomen, to be able to move that food through your colon. If you can't generate good force, then there's nowhere for that pressure to go, and things tend to bog down. So instead of having like a nice kind of trim midsection, you know, if everything is relaxed and just kind of sitting out there, you know, things move through, but they start to slow down, back up, don't move as well because they don't have that pressure that's helping them go. And if you've got hypermobility, I see a ton of weakness with my hypermobile clients in their core. So either abnormal muscle firing patterns, which is hugely common, people trying to use their diaphragm as their core, people trying to use their rectus, those ab muscles that go right down the front, instead of their transverse abdominal muscles, the ones that wrap all the way around the side and really kind of form that compression. And getting those muscles to work correctly, to work together, to hold you together is hugely important for digestion. Now, if you have abnormal firing patterns, again, super common with hypermobility, you end up with reflux. So you compress here and things go back up, not helpful. Or you end up with the pressure going down, which develops into incontinence. Or you get so tight where things are spasmed in that pelvic floor and then it doesn't let things go through the way it's supposed to, and it backs up, which causes more of the constipation issue. So having problems on any of those sides does not tend to be fun, does not tend to be unusual for hypermobility, but it is also fixable if you can get this system working better. And remember, your hip rotator muscles come together to help form that pelvic floor. So if you don't have good hip control, likely you don't have good pelvic floor muscle control either. And so getting that pelvic floor to work with your core, to not, or to work with your diaphragm and have your diaphragm not take over, all of those things become important for digestion, even though we don't tend to think of that. Now, if you have dysfunction in that category, you tend to end up with secondary conditions. And this is where we go back into like, okay, is there a diet for me? If you've had backup, typically you'll be labeled as irritable bowel syndrome. If you've had diverticulitis issues, these end up requiring some diet adjustments. Because a lot of times when the system slows down, it's not moving the way it's supposed to, it's backing up, that bacterial levels get goofy in your gut. And you're supposed to have bacteria in your gut. That is what helps break down food. But if you get the wrong bacteria in the wrong section, you can end up with secondary conditions like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And what happens is every time you eat anything with carbohydrates or sugar, you bloat up. And I like to describe this as 30 minutes after you eat, you look like you're 5 months pregnant. It's lovely, very uncomfortable, and it's very frustrating for people. So that type of secondary condition requires a FODMAP diet and typically some additional intervention. If you have diverticulitis pockets where you've had backup and now your bowel has stretched and now you've got pockets in it, that requires a little bit different type of diet, something more for the diverticulitis with adjusting with seeds and having a fiber and being able to get that through well. So you want to kind of watch those secondary conditions because those are going to be the things that are going to help dictate what you need. Now, where I see people struggle is they focus on these secondary conditions, these secondary issues, but if they never come back and fix the scar tissue from that gallbladder surgery, from the appendectomy, from the hysterectomy, that is playing into that dysfunction. And if that scar tissue is preventing you from getting your abdominal strength back, or if you've got a really dysfunctional muscle coordination pattern and you can't get those muscles to work together, you can treat these conditions and then they just come back and they come back and they come back. And as long as you're on the diet, it's a little bit better. But then as soon as you eat something that's not on your diet, then everything falls apart. So that becomes one of the things with breaking that cycle is you end up having to do the diet and the movement retraining and deal with the scar tissue if that's an issue for you and get that whole system working together. And that can be a challenging thing. One of the other last things I'll mention with hypermobility is for people who have mast cell issues. These are things where you can start to become sensitive to more and more and more things, foods, and it can become very debilitating. You want to be careful that you're taking care of that nervous system, taking care of your immune system, doing those stress management things, those relaxation things, so that way you're working with your physician to help minimize that and avoid those food sensitivities.